Good morning, grade 10. In this video, I'm going to explain what we're doing for week 6. We're going to look at language in Shakespeare, some Shakespearean insults and themes, motifs and symbols. First of all, thank you for your feedback. If you didn't submit the form, then you missed out on your choice to have a democratic say. To give you some feedback on your feedback, which is meta feedback. Majority of you said you did not enjoy working in groups because you felt some of your classmates were lazy. They're your words, not mine. So that's fine. We're not going to have much group work from now on, apart from some cases where you have the option to work in pairs or groups. Some of you said you were finding the tutorials videos useful. Please do watch the tutorial videos, because I can tell some of you don't, because you ask questions that have been explicitly answered in the tutorial video. So do continue to watch the videos. But thank you to those of you who said you found them useful. And some of you said that it would be nice to have some activities that aren't, don't involve you always looking at your screen, which I completely agree with. So we will try to do some activities that are not screen-based. And interestingly, lots of you said that you really enjoyed the Google Forms, which is fine. So guess what we're going to do for activity 1. So first of all, watch the video and Insider's guide, Language in Othello, then answer the Google Forms. Take your time with this, rewatch the video as many times as necessary. It's more important for you to get it right than to do it in one go. So that is your first activity. When you've done that, when you've submitted your forms, we're going to look a bit at Shakespearean insults. And these are some examples of Shakespearean insults. Thou frothy, sheep-biting bear whelp, thou droning pot-deep flapdragon. So what you're going to do is you're going to create your own Shakespearean insult. And there is, watch the video Insults by Shakespeare. It's very, very interesting. So you need to skim through Othello, obviously in Old Key English, and you need to look for vocabulary that could be used as an insult. So what you have to do is you have to make up 2 original Shakespearean insults, and each one must include at least 3 words from the text, Old English. They generally follow the rule of adjectives with the noun last. If you have to ask what an adjective or a noun is, then yeah. And they're obviously, they're going to be slightly offensive by nature, but not offensive to anyone in our community. I think you all know what is appropriate and what's not. So once you've come up with your Shakespearean insults, you need to go to Flipgrid, and this code will be shared on Google Classroom, and you need to record a response, and you have to record a video of yourself saying your insults. It's very straightforward. There'll be a big green plus, and you're limited, I think, to 1 minute. So it's a very brief video of you saying your insults. Try to be dramatic, try to give it some gravitas. So that's your second task. I think it's quite an easy task. I don't think it's too difficult. So your third task, we're going to look a bit at themes, motifs, and symbols. So I'm sure you've done this before, but a theme is a central idea or message that is interwoven throughout the novel. So an example of a theme from Othello is the incompatibility of military heroism and love. And if we think about Othello, his entire reputation is built on his military prowess. This is where he gains his respect from. And if we think of, especially in Act 1, when the Duke is referring to Othello, he's a man who's seen as full of virtue, full of honor. And the fact that there's this sort of taboo that this Moor is marrying Desdemona, who's a Caucasian, is sort of accepted because of his value on the battlefield. But later in the play, when his military skills are no longer required, remember the Turkish fleet sinks in the storm, he has no use for the characteristics that make him a great warrior. The fact that he's sort of paranoid, that he's violent. These characteristics are of no use anymore. And these characteristics actually make it impossible for him to have an understanding and trusting relationship with Desdemona. So it's this sort of idea throughout the play that the same things that make a warrior great mean that they are incapable of having meaningful and trusting relationships. And a motif, so a motif is, it can be an image, a sound, or an action that has sort of some symbolic significance, and it contributes towards the development of a theme. So motifs are often reoccurring, and they're often linked with themes. So for example, a motif I've chosen is the idea of sight and blindness. And this is obviously linked with the incompatibility of military heroism and love. So the idea of sight and blindness, it repeats throughout Othello, often with dramatic irony, to show how characters are unable to differentiate between sort of truth and lies. Just reality and illusion. So, for example, in Act 1, Scene 3, we have this Turkish feint at Rhodes. Remember, the Turks make it look like they're going to attack Rhodes, but the Venetians think this is just a bluff, this is a deception, because they actually want to attack Cyprus. And it's correctly viewed as a deception. But after this point in the play, Othello repeatedly makes the wrong decisions. So he's looking for deception when it's not there, sort of because he's unable to think outside of being a military commander. And so when he thinks he sees what is happening, he's actually blind. And when he needs to be perceptive and understand what's going on, he is unable to do this. And last but not least, we have symbols. So a symbol is sort of an idea, a sound, a word that represents something else and helps us to understand something. So symbols don't have to be connected to a theme. So if you're confused about the difference between a symbol and a motif is connected to a theme, a symbol is not. So for example, the handkerchief, okay? Remember we went through last lesson or last week about who the chief of the Hankies was. So for example, the handkerchief is very symbolic in Othello. And it represents something slightly different to each character. To Othello, it really represents the chastity of Emilia and her virtue as a wife. For Emilia, it represents Othello's love and devotion. This almost symbolizes Othello's love for her and his trust in her. And to Iago, it represents vengeance against Othello. It represents something that he can take from Othello. And so it is symbolic. So there's an example of a theme, a motif, and a symbol from Othello. So what you have to do is find one other example of a theme, a motif, and a symbol. Then watch the video, The Basics of Visual Note-Taking. And you're going to make visual notes on your theme, motif, and symbol. You can do this electronically if you want. You can use Canva, you can use Pages, Adobe Illustrator is quite good. Or you can do them by hand. You can do this as a mind map. You can do it almost as a graphic novel. Whatever works for you. And when you're done, take a picture of your image or upload it as a JPEG to your study guide in section 5. The only thing I'm going to say, your work has to be in landscape because obviously your Google Slides are in landscape. So I would encourage you, get off your computer, do this by hand. Okay? And that is all our work is for this week. As ever, I'm available on Google Classroom, Google Hangouts to answer any questions that you have. And enjoy your week and be productive.